What's up guys, welcome back to Albion Pew Pew. Now, I know this video took a while because I had a lot of footage to go through, which also means that this is going to be a pretty long video. But at the end of this video, I do have some announcements to make, so make sure you stick around for it. Now, without further ado, let's start talking about this build. One-hand spear, torch, guardian helmet, cultist robe, scholar sandals, undead cape, omelet for your food, and healing potions for potions. For your skills and passives, take Emergency Heal on the Guardian Helmet with the damage reduction passive, Levitate on the chest with the damage passive, Focus Run on the sandals with the damage passive, and on the spear, take the melee Q, Inner Focus W, and Slow on auto attacks for your passive. So you can see here that the armor choices are pretty much exactly the same as my Warbow build, and this is because we are again building it for PvX. So we want that super high sustain, that ability to reset the fights, so you can take on these 1v2s, 1v3s with fair ease. Now I know a lot of you guys find the cultist robe to be a little bit too expensive for you. There are some options for it, and I will talk about those options later on in the video. So, the idea of this build is to use the hypermobility on the spear to dodge in and out of fights. As I said before in my previous videos, the one-hand spear is the most mobile weapon in the game. It's faster even than the bloodletter. And because of the fact that your Q is a semi-ranged skill that has a AoE and a slow, you can actually kite with this build even though you are using a melee weapon. Spears are also the only melee weapons that can stack up their Qs instantly, so unlike the heroic charges on the swords or the thunder armor charges on the daggers, the melee Q on the spear gives you a stack for each target that you hit with it, so if you hit 3 targets, you can stack up your Q and get maximum damage on your E instantly. Your E is not only a big damage skill, but it also lets you reposition yourself and interrupt enemy skills. So all this, combined with the movement speed from your W, the inner focus skill, and the CC resistance from your Scholar Sandals, allows you to keep dashing into a fight, do some big damage, and then disengage. And we're running cooldown reduction on the food and on the torch, so you can do this repeatedly. Some of you might be wondering why I use a torch and not a Mistcaller. The torch gives you some cooldown reductions, and so does your food, and the combination of the two puts you right at the soft cap for cooldown reductions. So if you run a Mistcaller, you're actually not going to get that much more CDR out of it. And Mistcaller is pretty expensive compared to the spear, and because of the fact that your Q stacks on the spear gives you a lot of auto attack damage, so the attack speed on the torch actually scales really well into the spear. So that's why I use the torch. In my previous video where I was talking about how to be a rat or how to play against a rat, you saw me playing the spear with a Mistcaller as my offhand, but that's because I was using a different food. I wasn't using the cooldown reduction omelets, right? So I wasn't hitting the soft capped with only a torch, right? So that's the only case in which I would switch to a Mistcaller instead of the torch. Is when you are not getting that extra cooldown reduction from the food. Now, I made a claim earlier that the spear is the fastest weapon in the game. It's faster even than the bloodletter. So in this little clip, I'm going to prove it. So you see I just got into a fight here against two players that are using bloodletters. And, I started out the fight kind of losing a little bit, so I used my E there to not only hit both of them, but also dash towards the faction champion over there. So once the faction champion got involved in the fight, and a couple more blue players showed up, they start running away. But you'll see here that with the spear, I have no trouble at all chasing down these guys using bloodletters and killing them and getting their loot. I think at first a lot of players have trouble believing that the spear is actually the fastest weapon because the inner focus skill has such a long channel time. But as you can see, that channel time really is outweighed by the amount of movement speed that the skill gives you. You do actually end up running a lot faster than the bloodletters with the spear. And all this mobility that you have is going to work together really well with your levitate, because when you're using your levitate, you're actually kind of vulnerable. Like, sure, it blocks all incoming physical damage, but you're not going to be vulnerable to magic damage, and in an outnumbered fight, it's really easy to get your levitate interrupted, right? So in this little fight here, after I got the inspect on these guys, I thought, oh, they're all running pretty low gear. I could probably take on all three of them because I have all these heals. But then you saw just there that the bloodletter guy in the plate mail, he's actually running a knight armor, so he ran up to me, threw a wind wall at me, and it interrupted my levitate, right? So you don't want that to happen when you're fighting, outnumbered, right? So when you're using your levitate, always make sure that you create some distance first with your with the W, your E, and your F. Create some distance first, and then use your levitate to heal up and reset the fight. Now, in this fight, I did end up still coming out on top because I can run so fast. I could run away until one of them turned blue, right? Because we're conditional flag. Now, if you don't know how conditional flagging works in this game, watch the next clip, and I'm gonna explain it in the next clip. Now, when I talk about conditional flagging, I mean getting flagged up by the free PvP zones in red and yellow zones. So the way that works is you see this big orange circle on the ground. Once you enter that circle, you have 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, you'll be conditional flagged. And once you're conditional flagged, you can fight other players who's also being conditional flagged or hard PvP flagged, right? So another thing is once you're in combat with someone, even after you leave the circle, you will still be conditional flagged. So that's why I can chase this guy all the way out here. But because we're not actually hard PvP flagged, all these blue people that you see around us, they're not actually able to hit us. They're I don't know. They just don't know we're conditional flagged, I guess. But they can't actually hit us. Only we can. So earlier I talked about how the torch scales really well into the spear because of the extra damage that you have from your Q stacks. Now here in this dungeon dive, you're gonna see I'm gonna run into a Baton Bow player, and he's running the exact same Baton Bow build that I featured in some of previous videos. So he's running some pretty good gear, so it's not like he's getting outgeared at all. And you'll see how fast his health bar drops just from my auto attacks and Qs. I'm gonna hit him with my E in a bit, uh, but it's by the time that I actually use my E, my Q stacks have dropped off, so it didn't really do that much damage to him. Right, so I pretty much out damaged this player just with my Qs and my auto attacks, and of course the empowerment from my inner focus. And you saw earlier that he was standing there and trying to trade a couple of auto attacks with me, but by the time he realized he was losing, it's way too late for him to try to run. And even if he did run from the beginning, there's just no way you can actually get away from this build. So in these next couple of clips, you're gonna see a very annoying little glitch that's been happening to me pretty consistently. I do hope this gets fixed in the future, but basically what it is if you get hit by something like a snare charge or a uh, claw eat, like you're gonna see it right there. You see how that happened? So basically, if you get hit by some kind of a rooting effect right when you're dashing, your dash will go on cooldown, but your character will bounce right back to where you were. It almost looks like rubber banding, but I think it's just some kind of weird interaction between the skills. So if stuff like that happens to you, don't panic. Just be ready to let your undead cape proc, and then once you're in stealth from the undead cape, you can still attack people and use your skills in the stealth from undead cape, and you're not gonna lose your stealth, right? So you probably saw right there that when I got stealth by the undead cape, I first drank a healing potion, and then I used levitate, and the two of them together healed me back to almost full health by the time that my undead cape ended. The thing that you need to keep in mind when you're using your undead cape is that your healing power and your damage will be halved while you're stealthed. So using the levitate by itself was not gonna restore me back to full health because it's halved. And when you see when I chase this person, when I start chasing this person now, he's gonna try to last stand me right here. He's gonna claw me in the undead cape, and you see that he's gonna do almost no damage to me with his claw E because again, it's half-ult while you're stealth from undead cape. And that applies to both your damage and your healing, which is why I layer the healing pot on top of the levitate. Alright, in this next clip, I'm going to show you a little synergy between this build and a bloodletter. So this guy you see right here, the half HP guy, he's running a bloodletter, right? And I was just passing by that circle and I see him chasing these 4 or 5 arch people. So I invite him to a party, and I go in with him to 2v5 the arch group. And you're gonna see me getting hit by the same glitch that I was talking about before with the different skill. I think it was a snare charge this time. And yep, snare charge there. There you go. There's the bounce back. Yeah, but luckily we do get one of them low enough for the bloodletter to execute, and he gets it, and then just disappears. Right, and then they chase me a little bit. I get more of them low, and you see when the bloodletter's E comes back, he's gonna come back and get another free execute. So yeah, this build, I think it like really works together with bloodletter if you have a friend that plays a bloodletter, right? Because you're both super fast with it, it's really easy for both of you to dash in and out of fights, like I was talking about before. And because you're so fast, you can also kind of juggle who takes the aggro. Like when we just went in, he was tanking a lot of the damage, so he popped Cleric Girl and ran away. And then it was my turn to kind of take the focus, right? So he comes back in and gets a finish. And then after we win the fight, it's pretty much impossible to actually escape from us. Like we do end up chasing down all 5 of them, right? Just because we're so fast. Okay, so at the beginning of the video, I talked about how the spear can be used to kite even though it's a melee weapon. Uh, and that's because we're using this inner focus skill. It's a big mobility skill, and your Q is semi-ranged, right? So you can use the movement speed to create distance between you and the target, and use the range and the slow on the Q to just keep poking him down until you can safely engage on him. Now, a lot of bruiser builds out there, for example, this guy right here is running a Claymore, Hellion Jacket, Keeper Cape even, right? So a lot of these bruiser builds with Hellion Jackets and Mercenary Jackets are really hard to take down if you were to just fight them face to face, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to just whittle him down, do the best you can to not let him hit you uh, with the life steals, so he doesn't get any healing, and you can out sustain him that way. You can just kite and run and heal, right? So he couldn't hard engage on you because you're faster, right? So here, because he noticed that he was getting kited, so he starts running away. And then when his Hellion Jacket came back, he tried to hard engage on us again. And he saw how much damage he did to me, right? So if I was to fight him toe to toe from the start, I probably would have lost. So when you're playing against these kind of builds, you have to respect the amount of straight up face-to-face fighting power that they have, right? So uh, don't hard engage on them straight off the bat. Poke them down first, and then when you get them down to the point where they're just too low HP for to come back into the fight, that's when you can hard engage on them and trade attacks with them toe to toe and kill them. Okay, so in this clip, you're gonna see me fighting against another one of those builds that are really tanky and do a lot of damage and hard to kill. It's a one-handed curse. And the one-handed curse is different from it's different from the sword in that it's a ranged weapon, right? So you can't really kite all of their damage. The only damage that you can avoid and you have to avoid is the big skull. I think it's called the Death Curse, right? So you see here he drops the Death Curse on me, and I just run away from him, and then use Guardian Helmet to pull off the Q stacks. Now I talked about this in some earlier videos, but your Guardian Helmet doesn't just heal you, it also takes away bleeding and damage over time effects on you, right? So that means you can take away the curse Qs, and when you take off the Q stacks on you, the curse E is not gonna hit you as hard, right? So I did that to him the first time, and then the second time, uh, he put the skull on me, and I tanked it with a levitate, and the third time he puts it on, and at that time he was already full, he was already kind of low health, so I didn't run away. I just timed it. I timed it until the like last second right before the skull was about to pop, and hit the guardian helmet then, so he couldn't reapply any stacks, right? So that way I was able to actually tank or to avoid 3 death curses. And even though he was able to heal himself for a whole bunch with the mercenary jacket, we still ended up out-sustaining him because we didn't really take damage from his biggest damage skill. Now, while it is fairly easy for us to kite other people with this build, it's almost impossible for them to kite us. You're gonna see right here, I'm gonna fight against this Warbow, and Warbow, as you know from my previous videos, Warbows are all about kiting. They're all about landing this ray of light so you can hit your magic arrows from max range and do a lot of damage. Um, but that's not gonna happen here because we can run so fast. It's really easy to dodge those ray of lights, and even when they do hit a ray of light, it's very easy for us to follow up. Like right here, I'm gonna get hit, and then I'm still gonna chase him down anyway and kill him with our E. Right, so you can see that Warbow, there was no chance for him to kite against this build. Okay, so I think everybody gets the idea behind this build now. So in the next couple of clips, I'm gonna talk a little bit about a couple of general PvP tips that I have here, guys. So the first one is gonna be about dungeons and bubbles. So you all know that when you just enter a dungeon, you get this bubble on you that makes you invulnerable to damage for a few seconds, right? And usually when you exit the dungeon, you get the same bubble on you. But if you look on my buff bar right now, you see that little icon with a crossed out shield. If you have that debuff on you, you cannot get another bubble for I believe it was 2 minutes or is it 1 minute? Doesn't matter. For as long as you have that debuff on you, you cannot get another bubble. Okay. Now that means if you enter a dungeon and you exit the dungeon right away, you're gonna exit the dungeon without a shield on you, right? So you see in this clip, I just killed someone in this dive, and then someone came in after me, and he saw me in the dungeon, and he tried to leave, but now he's outside, and you see he doesn't have a shield, so that means he can't just mount up and run. So I come outside, and as soon as I can, I auto attack him to make sure he doesn't mount up, and now he's forced to fight me. And this guy, he's running interestingly, he's running a dagger pair, so I think maybe he was looking for a dungeon dive as well. He was probably just looking for PvEers for the easy picking, and then when he saw a flagged up PvPer inside, he decided to run. But because he didn't understand how the shield mechanic works, it ended up working against him. Okay, the last tip is about the free PvP zones. Now, I already explained earlier how free PvP zones and conditional flagging works, but you can see that this guy here with the Death Givers, he definitely doesn't get it because once he started losing the fight against me, instead of running back to the free PvP zone where his friends can flag up and help him, he decided to run away from me, and that actually ended up getting him killed. If he was to run straight back to the free PvP zone, he would have been saved because he has so many friends here who can flag up and help him. So earlier in the video, I talked a little bit about how you can replace the cultist robe with a cheaper option if you couldn't afford it. These cheaper options include mage robe, assassin jacket, stalker jacket, and fiend robe. Right, so these are some options that I've tried before. Now I don't have a whole lot of videos of me using these, so I'm not gonna show it on video, but I'll talk about it a little bit. Right, so the mage robe is probably my favorite one for open world if I was to pick one to replace my cultist robe with, and that's because the mage robe's purging shield can be used both aggressively and defensively. You can purge away a lot of these really annoying buffs like Bloodlust or Hellion Jacket. So those bruiser builds that I was talking about earlier, like that Curse and that Claymore player that I played against earlier, they would have been a little bit easier to kill because you can purge away their healing buffs, right? The Assassin Jacket is also a good choice for those like really outnumbered fights. If you're going into like a really active zone and you're worried that you'll get zerged over, the Assassin Jacket makes you more slippery, so it's easier for you to get away. Um, and then there's the starter jacket. The starter jacket is more of like an all-in kind of option because it does a lot of damage, and that damage is amplified by your inner focus, right? So it's something that you can potentially one burst the squishy with. And then there's the Fin Robe. The Fin Robe is something that is very good for killing melees because of the fear. You can turn them away from you, and while they're running away from you, you can still kill them. Um, and it's also really good for killing healers, especially holy healers, because you can CC them and interrupt their heals. Okay, so that concludes my 1vx spear video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you guys want to copy this build and give it a shot, let me know if you find any success with it. If you have any questions about how this build works, anything I wasn't clear on, feel free to come into my Twitch and ask me. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I do have some announcements to make. First is, as you can tell by the big green bar at the bottom of the screen, I've reached my Twitch sub goal. So I'm gonna need to set a new goal, and I'm gonna need some ideas on what to do when I reach the next goal. So if you have any cool ideas, any crazy ideas, any ways to embarrass me that you can think of, let me know in the comments below what do you want me to do when I reach the next goal. Okay, one more announcement to make is I'll be starting on a new YouTube series. I'm gonna call it the PP Academy, and it's gonna be a bunch of new player guides, but they're going to be tailored toward those players who are interested in becoming solo PvP players. I think there are a I think there are already a lot of like new player guides on YouTube for LB Online, but none of them are actually tailored towards the solo PvP players, and I think a lot of them are actually quite out of date. If you go to the LBN Reddit and you look into the new player resource section, you'll find some guides in there like how do you make silver fast, how do you make enough silver to make premium in 3 days, stuff like that. But those things are actually pre Percival patch. So, they're not even gonna talk about solo dungeons, and of course the premium prices back then were way cheaper than they are now. So a lot of those guys are pretty outdated and inaccurate. So that's why I decided I'm gonna make my own little effort here to help the player retention in this game, and I'm gonna do this new series of beginner guides. Now, like I said earlier, it's gonna be tailored toward those players who want to become solo PvPers, and it's gonna feature me starting with a tier 3, starting with a new account using all tier 3 weapons and gear, and I'm gonna show everyone how to get from that point to the point where you can do all this stuff that I do on my streams. So if you're interested in seeing those videos when they come out, then make sure you have me subbed on YouTube so you can get alerts when they do come out. And if you have any ideas for those videos, if you have any topics you want me to cover, or you think you have some more efficient ways to do something than I do, jump into my stream and let me know. I'm pretty open to suggestions right now.